Are you struggling with roadblocks as a woman in the challenging and constantly changing world of corporate America? If you feel stuck in your career, you may be holding yourself back and may not even realize it. Prepare to be enlightened by the meaningful discussions here at the No Woman Left Behind podcast. Each week, gather the insight you need to break down those walls of limiting beliefs. Unleash your full potential and unlock the leader within. Listen to raw conversations with corporate women as they share inspiring stories with the purpose of obtaining their dream career and living a truly fulfilling life. Here's your host, Rosie Zilinkas.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Do you feel that you can bring your authentic self to work 100% of the time? Maybe 80%, maybe 50%. Believe it or not, there are people that never feel that they can bring in their authentic self to work ever. I invited Kelly Charles Collins to talk about what workplace culture is, why it's important for someone to feel safe at work and how that impacts their productivity. We're also going to talk about the important things to look at for an organization that you're considering joining as an employee. And we're also going to unpack what microcultures are within the organization. From the halls of justice to the corporate corridors, Kelly Charles Collins has dedicated her life to fostering respect, equity, and accountability in every sphere she touches. With over 2 decades of experience as an employment law trial attorney, she transformed her passion for justice into a mission of empowerment, using her unique skill set to enlighten, engage, and inspire. So please take a listen to my conversation with Kelly on workplace culture. Hey, Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to start with asking you to define for us, what do you consider the workplace culture?
Well, first of all, Rosie, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very excited about this. And when I think about culture, I think about the physical environment, but I also think about like your emotional well-being inside of that environment. So a lot of times we talk about culture and we're thinking about what is the mission of the organization, what is their vision, but it's also like the people who are in the organization. What is their mission? What is their vision? How do they feel, right? Do they feel comfortable being there? Do they feel like they're included? Do they feel like they belong there? So it's really real holistic view of looking at culture and not just looking at it from this almost sterile definition, right? That people have of like, oh, it's workplace culture. And it's like this rigid thing. And it's really not rigid, because inside of the culture, we also have microcultures. Right? We have many, many microcultures within the organization. And that could be just microcultures from people's ethnicity, their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, but it also could be inside of departments, and within those departments, inside of the teams, and inside of those teams, within like the little cliques that are in there. So culture is really an expansive thing that we need to start thinking of more broadly, instead of just like, oh, it's this one box that we put everybody in, and really start to think like going all the way down to almost like the cellular level of what's happening in the organization.
And I like the way you defined it, kind of like from macro all the way down to micro, because as you know, this podcast caters to women in the corporate world that are trying to continue to advance in their careers. And a lot of times, I think, especially in the olden days, corporations were like, oh, no, you're an employee here, so this is the only thing we're going to see. And now I think as employees are trying to be more themselves and really bring their whole self. I was actually at a diversity conference 2 weeks ago, recently, and one of the speakers there was represented the LGBTQ community. And
where were you, Rosie?
I was in New York. It was inclusion. Okay. Yeah, it was the Inclusion and Insurance Conference.
Okay.
And the speaker that was there, she said one of the scariest questions that an individual in the LGBTQ community that hasn't come out is, how was your weekend?
Yes.
Because you don't know, it's like, do I say how my weekend was? Do I not say how my weekend was? So I think more and more people just want to be real with, their coworkers and try to bring their whole self into this workplace culture.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you have encountered with bringing that workplace culture? Because as you said, there's so many different segments, and from the corporate perspective, they're trying to really engage people with, like, for example, employee resource groups. There's a lot of employee resource groups, and there's the young professionals and the Latino and the, LGBT and whatever. So what are some of the challenges that you have encountered when we're talking about that workplace culture?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I'm a Black woman, right? So being Black in the workplace, being Black in America is a very challenging thing. I was watching a video today of a young man at his graduation, young Black man, and he was talking about what it's like being a Black male or being a Black person in our educational society and the things that we have to go through. And so, just being able, easy thing, our hair, right? So as a Black woman, our hair is a bone of contention. Why? It grows out of my scalp. Like, that's just the way it grows out of my scalp naturally. But I'm not supposed to wear my hair like that because there's a conversation around whether that is professional or not. So think about that, right? So when I get up in the morning and I have to think about, okay, do I get to wear my natural hair, or do I have to now go put chemicals in my hair that somewhere down the road could cause me health issues because somebody thinks it's unprofessional, when there are people who don't have to worry about that, right? So people who are not Black, non-Black women, they don't have to get up in the morning and be like, oh, I can't really wear my real hair today, right? I have to put on a wig, I have to put on a weave, I have to relax my hair, right? So there's things like that in terms of just being able, when you say show up authentically, do we really mean that, right? We have organizations who are like, yeah, we want you to bring your whole self to work. You sure? Like, you sure about that one, right? Or is it what you believe to be, professional, and what you believe to be appropriate in terms of bringing my whole self to work? And I'm working with a lawyer right now, and she's a speaker, and we're working on her talk, and she's talking about mental health. And one of the things that she talks about is this whole idea of, being in these spaces and trying to be normal, right? And so what does that mean for somebody who's having mental health challenges? What does that mean to be normal? And how hard are you fighting every single day to, quote unquote, normalize your behavior so that you're not ostracized inside of this culture, or look like somebody that's out of the norm of what is, quote unquote, culturally acceptable? So I think we have to, and that's why I say you have to go really down to the microcultures and the individual level when we're talking about culture, because, people say that we all experience life differently, but really what we experience life is individually, right? Because think about if you have a sibling, right? There are siblings who were raised in the same household by the same people with the same, right, experiences, and their lives, or the way that they experience that life, is totally different. Why? Because at an individual level, we're experiencing something that, yes, that person's also experiencing that thing, but our individuality has us experience it differently. So I think when we start to talk about, bringing your whole self to work, and, culture and all of that, we really have to, sometimes we just have to mind our business, right? And then sometimes we just have to be more open and not thinking. I think part of what's happening now too, if you hear it in discourse, is I don't want you to do this. I don't like that you do this. I don't like this. Therefore, you can't. Well, why do you get to tell me what I can and cannot do? Right. And so I think a lot of it is about minding our own business and thinking about, now, if that person is transgender, Or if this person decides that because of their religion, they need to wear a hijab, does that really impact you? I mean, does that really impact your life? And so I think it's really, it's really just getting to thinking about people as humans, right? As human beings, and then just really minding our business about some of this stuff. And then if you're curious, then asking questions out of curiosity, as opposed to trying to demean or diminish somebody.
Yeah, no, oh my gosh, you said so much there. One of the things that I want to acknowledge is I always say live and let live. Like you say, it doesn't matter to me what other people do or don't do, what their religion, whatever. And I'm by no means ever trying to change anybody or even convince someone else of my beliefs, because they're my beliefs. And, I always say, you know what, this is what I believe. You can believe whatever you want, and let's agree to disagree and, live and let
moving.
Yeah. And so, but I will never understand those people that want to change others so that they think like themselves. And it's like, well, why? Is it like power? Is it control? I think it's a little bit of both, but it's just very perplexing to me. And you said, it's really none of your business. And I think I've heard a couple people say it's really none of your business what anybody else thinks about you either, because like I personally try not to concern myself about what people, if they like me, if they don't like me, whatever. I mean, everybody wants to be liked, but at some point you can't worry about it. You can't be so preoccupied that someone doesn't like you. Oh, well, especially at work, you're there to do your job. Obviously, we want you to be authentic as you feel comfortable, because I can tell you, you said, people grow up differently in the same household. I'm one of 5, and there's a span of 15 years between my oldest sister, I'm number 3, and my youngest sister. Well, exact same parents, exact same values, but by the time the 3rd and the 4th kid came around, my parents were tired.
Yeah.
The parents that my 2 older sisters
are different.
So different. By the time I came around, they started to relax, and then 4 and 5, they were like, whatever.
And for yourself.
And we're all so different. We have very different perspectives. And I'm 100% Mexican. We lived in Mexico City for about 10 years when I was a kid. So when I moved to the States, it's kind of, do I act Mexican? Do I not? Do I speak Spanish? Do I not? And, the other day, someone said to me, oh, you pass as white. I was like, even a little shocked, because I never even thought of myself as passing. So it's so interesting when you have a background that's not normal, as you say, white in America. There are different perspectives and different challenges that you have to go through. Now, when it comes to employee engagement and talking about corporations trying to retain employees and keep them to be engaged, how does that workplace culture and that employee engagement go together?
Well, if people don't feel safe, they don't feel included, they don't feel like they belong, they don't feel like they are, that they can say something and it's going to be addressed, or say something it's going to be valued, then they're going to shut down. I mean, that's just common sense, right? That's how we operate in life. If you're in a space and you're talking, or you're trying to give your opinion, or, you share an idea, and every time you share an idea, it gets shut down, or there's a meeting and you're never the one invited to the meeting, there's a stretch assignment and you never get the assignment, right? Oh, you keep applying for jobs and you never get them. At some point, you're just going to shut down. And so there should be no mystery inside of corporations about why there is disengagement. It could be the leadership, right? It could be the executive leadership. It could be the management level. Sometimes, the executive team is like, okay, everything's, they want everything to be good, but then who you have running the everyday. So when we talk about the microcultures, who you have running the everyday is impacting, right, the way that people are showing up in the organization. And, there's so many things that impact employee engagement. So you have people who are in your organizations that they're living paycheck to paycheck. Right? They can't afford to pay for medication. When they woke up this morning, they had to decide whether they were going to put gas in the car to come to work, or be able to put food on the table, or be able to pay for their child's, music classes, or get them, be able to put them into a dance class or something, right? There's so many things that are also, when we talk about culture, it's not just what's happening in the organization, it's what people bring with them every day to work, what's happening outside. And when you have the pressure and the pressure cooker of an organization where now, like, I have all of this happening out here, and now I come in here and you just make me feel like I'm nobody, or, there's just so much pressure. Sometimes, especially like when we talk about Black people and Black women in particular, like there's this pressure for us to be, over excellent, right? I don't even know if that's a word, but like to just be excellent beyond, and also to exercise such restraint because we have labels of being the angry Black woman, etc. So when we think about all of those things, there should be no shock that people are not even just, they're not engaged, they're actively disengaged. And then when you think about, Gen Z, millennials and Gen Z, they're disengaged because we want to do things the way we've always done things, right? So I'm a Gen Xer, so we're in the middle. We kind of just get lost, right? People don't think about us too much, right? And so they want to work differently. They want to operate in this world differently. They have the unique ability to create economies, right? That we didn't have. And so if you don't allow them to be who they are, they're very much into social responsibility and all the things. If you don't allow them to be who they are, they will disengage, right? And they'll go talk about you on TikTok and all the things. And you wonder, like, wait, why is my reputation, like, what's happening? Why can't we keep people? Why can't we get people? Go look on TikTok, go look on Glassdoor, go look on all these places to see what people are saying. But it really is not just what's happening in the organization, but what happens there also goes to, filters out into the family and into the society at large, and what's happening out there filters in. So it's really just a hodgepodge of things that cause that.
Okay, so I know we're going to go through your V-Suite framework, but as far as courageous conversations, and if you want to be more authentic, like how can, and let's just talk about the Black woman in the corporate world. How can the Black woman in the corporate world be more authentic through those courageous conversations to try to be more engaged? Because that if you're disengaged, you're not going to be recognized, you're not going to be up for that promotion. And one of the things that I want is like, how do we get the Black woman to be engaged?
Yeah.
What do they do?
I think the first thing to recognize is that most often it's not our responsibility. Okay. Right. So most often we are being required as Black women to fix what we didn't break. And so when you're saying, like, how do we get you to engage? How do we get you to have these courageous conversations? Well, the reason we don't engage in these conversations is because when we do, we're penalized for it. When we do, we're called the angry Black woman. When we do, we are met with white woman tears, right? And so you want to put a responsibility on us for something that is not ours. Secondly, though, this is for everybody who wants to have these conversations, is to understand, why do you want to have this conversation? So if you're saying, oh, well, we should have this conversation about this difficult issue or this toxic situation, why? Why do I want to have that conversation, right? What am I trying to get across? What am I trying to clear up? What am I trying to solve? Right. And how do I want this to end? How do I want it to be resolved? So when you say, how do we get you to be more authentic? We try to be authentic, but that's the problem, right? We're not allowed to be authentic. And so therefore it's going to shut you down, and you're not going to want to engage in these conversations. And then when we're asked now to then do it, It's like, okay, well, this is like a dog and pony show, right? You have me doing things that I know that if I'm authentic, right? And if I say some of the things, like some of what I just said, if I talk about white woman tears, or if I said, the reason we don't talk is because, we have retribution for speaking up. Then if I feel that that's what's going to happen to me, I'm not going to speak. Right. Because again, we have to think about safety. So our brains are fight, flight, and freeze. We're always looking, and our mind is going to try to protect us. And a lot of, you have Black women who they are the breadwinners of their family. They may be the only, right? They may be, single, they whatever. And so they don't want to lose the job, right? And they know that, and as Black women, we know that we have a better chance of being labeled, and then all of a sudden when you were doing well, then all of a sudden your performance reviews look like this, and now you're slowly being moved out the door, right? And so when you think about courageous conversations and you think about the responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility to have these conversations. And if there's something, if you notice that there are Black, brown, Asian, Latino, I don't care who it is, who have somehow disengaged, then especially as managers, right, and leaders in the organization, it's your responsibility to go figure out how to have a conversation with that person to understand why it is that person is disengaged. And not just to have the conversation to say, well, I talked to him and whatever, I did it, but to actually be genuinely interested in resolving the issue so that that person who may have been engaged before, who's now actively disengaged, comes back to being engaged.
Oh, I think that's fabulous. I think that's fabulous for the manager to really genuinely want to engage. Now, I know a few people that are male, white, and they're managers, and I know them on a personal level, and they can't have a conversation. So I always wonder, like, how do people? And it's not just white males, but anybody that can't lead, that can't have the conversation, that can't just have that courageous conversation. I always think we as people need to provide really good, solid training for for any manager, but specifically for the middle managers that have those direct reports. Because if you are not able to have a conversation with your direct report, then there's something wrong there.
And, it's so funny. One of the things that I learned, so, when George Floyd was murdered, companies, all over calling me and having me do listening sessions, right? So that we could have these conversations. And what I learned, Rosie, in those conversations was that it's not that people don't want to have the conversations. They don't know how to have the conversations, right? They don't have the skills. And so that's why I created my framework, the perfect framework, to show people. And that's what I train organizations on. And I've actually just created a card deck called the Convo Catalyst card deck, and expanding my training to be an interactive workshop where we will actually go through the framework and the process of having these conversations. And organizations can buy the card deck, and it has 52 scenarios. So they can go through it. It could be a team builder, it could be an icebreaker, whatever, just to be able to practice, because practice makes perfect, right? And so part of it, what I learned was, people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing, not knowing where to start, like disrupting or just destroying a relationship if they have this conversation. And so two things I always talk about, and I mentioned them before, but it's when you're preparing to have the conversation is really to understand why you want to have the conversation and what you want to get out of it. So I always talk about those as the bookends, and that's the P part of it, the preparation. Because if I tell my clients all the time, if you don't know anything else, don't remember anything else Kelly tells you, if you remember those two things, that will direct the tone and tenor of the conversation, because you can always be thinking, oh man, this is not why I wanted to have this conversation. Well, if I keep going like this, or if this keeps going like this, it's not going to have the outcome that I intended, right? So even just those two things, but also like being very prepared to have the conversation. So to your point about, new managers or emerging managers, but even some senior level managers, right? Not having the ability to have the conversation because they're not prepared to have the conversation. They haven't done their research. They're just, something comes to them. They may be under pressure, right? So we know that they may be under pressure so that they have to have this conversation. And then understanding that once they do have the conversation, it's a dialogue, right? I'm not here to debate you. I'm a lawyer. I love to debate, right? But in management and in these spaces, it's more about like the mentoring and the coaching and really trying to come to an understanding if that's what you want to do, right? If you truly, as a manager, invested in making your people better, then you should want to have this conversation where you're both understanding, and you should want to come to that conversation with information. I mean, to me, it's like disrespectful to come into a conversation like performance reviews or, some type of, oh, I need to talk to you about something. And you start to say, well, I heard that you did this, or your sales are bad, or, you didn't complete this assignment. And the person's like, okay, well, show me, like, what do you have? Well, I don't. That's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to go nowhere really, really fast. So part of it is just about being respectful, being prepared to have the conversation, understanding why, checking yourself, right, around your biases and all of that kind of stuff. And the whole framework is there. And then reflecting on, after you've had the conversation, like, what could be better? What could be changed? What do I need to do? What do I need to follow up on? But you're right. Like, and it's so funny that you say that, because I have, in the last year, I was like, this is what I want to focus on. I want to focus on how to have these conversations, because I believe conversations change things.
Do you feel that you're spinning your wheels and advancing your career slower than you'd like? Well, I got you, because I have a free quiz to help you figure out how you may sabotage your career advancement. Our free quiz is designed to help you identify the common pitfalls preventing you from reaching your career goals. The quiz is 100% free, and it only takes 3 minutes to complete. Take the quiz now to start taking control of your career today. The link is on the episode website. And now let's head back to today's conversation. Absolutely. It's funny because at that same diversity conference that I was at, there was a gentleman, Chris DeSantis, and he actually talked about the 4 generations that are in the workforce, right? And so he's talking about the baby boomers and the Gen Xers like us, saying or labeling the millennials as entitled. But what he talked about was, so we are parents, our baby boomers and ourselves, and especially us, because the baby boomers were like, you are to be seen and not heard. And if I say you're going to do something, you're going to do it without any questions asked. Then the Gen Xers became parents, and our kids, we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to ask questions and have dialogue with our kids and have them be curious and them ask questions. And then these children are now coming into the workforce as now millennials and Gen Z.
And their parents, they are parents too.
But we as baby boomers and Gen Xers now are surprised that they're asking all these questions. And he's like, why are we surprised? We raised these kids. Yeah. And it was really enlightening for me, because I used to be one of those like, oh my gosh, these kids are entitled. They're like asking so many questions. But he's like, they just want to understand why they're doing what they're doing and why it matters. And if it doesn't matter to them, then they're going to go somewhere else. And I was like, that is so literally enlightening, because we expect them to think the way we thought, and I see that in my kids. I have 2 young 20-somethings, and I mean, our thought processes are so completely different. Like, I wouldn't do it. And then I have to remind myself, they are not me. They are doing their own thing. I tell them what I think, and then they decide. But holy cow, it's just so completely different. And who knows what's going to happen with the with the Gen A's, right? The Gen Alphas that are going to be coming in, but
help us.
It's so interesting how.
Yeah. And, and even in those conversations, as you say that, right, when you're thinking about managing across generations, because we still even have some places 5 generations, we still have some traditionalists, right, who are in our organizations. And so when you're managing across generations, yes, you have to be so mindful of that something I may say to a Gen Xer, if I say the same thing to a millennial, I have one, right? My son is a millennial. If I say something to him the way that it was said to me, or my thought process, as you were saying, Rosie, they're just like, y'all are aliens, and I don't know what's what you're thinking about. But we were raised, right, to go to school and do this, and then get your job, and then be there, and do the things. And for them, they're not raised in that situation. They're raised to know that they can go, be, do, whenever, however, why ever, and they are why people, right? They really want to understand the why. For us, we're just like, do as you're told. Do as you're told. We just do as we're told, right? There's rules. Okay, we follow the rules. No, they want to know, why is that the rule? Because for them, that rule might not make sense, right? And it just doesn't fit into the way that they think and see the world, because their world is so much bigger than the worlds that we were growing up in.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to be culturally competent to manage across all of that.
Yes. And it's funny too, because my parents were very much like, do what I tell you to do, period. And then they can't. So when my kids were little and they didn't want to eat what I made, and my mom's like, I don't know why you give them a choice. I'm like, oh, because I want them to eat what they want to eat. So it's just so funny.
Yeah.
So I know that you have this V-Suite framework, and I want to kind of shift the conversation a little bit, because I know that's a really powerful framework. So I know that there's 4 components to it: vision, voice, visibility, and value. So I'd like to spend the rest of our time just talking about that, but because I think that V framework is so powerful for any woman that is trying to do things a little bit differently, so that they can continue to see different ways to advance. So let's go through your V-Suite framework.
Absolutely. So I say it's the V-Suite, where women own their voice, their vision, their voice, their visibility, and their value.
Love it.
And I think it's so important because we have been programmed, right? Society has programmed us from the times we were little girls, and even now in our workplaces, around, who we should be, what we should say, how we should show up, what we should wear, what we should, wait your turn, don't speak too loud, oh, you're this, right? So we've had all of these things put upon us. And because of that, what has happened is that we have become complicit in what I say is our own erasure, right? The erasing of our value. And so there should be no, again, mystery around why we have this whole thing about, there's a sticky floor where we can't get out of, like, low and mid management, or there's a glass ceiling because we can't get past a certain. We have bought into so much of what is there. And there's a fear of being able to just break out and be free. And so for me, the V-Suite is that freedom. It's that place where you say, I am more committed to my freedom. I'm more committed to, like, really standing in my own greatness and my value than I am to being complicit in my own erasure. And so when I think about, like, the 4 components, and you think about vision, think about, what is the vision for your life? Not the vision that everyone created for you, not the vision that us as Gen Xers, when our parents were like, oh, go out into the world and this is what you need to do, right? So many of us are living in a vision that was created for us, instead of living in the vision that we really truly desire for ourselves. And we sit and just are with ourselves, and we're just like, man, I wish, right? I wish my life looked like this. And just really start to create that vision about, and, with all the 5 senses, right? Really think about what life looks like. And it's life as an individual, it's life in whatever partnerships, it's life as a parent, it's life as an employee or a business owner, whatever that is, but really create that vision. And, I always say, like, write it down and make it plain, because it has to be something that you are so committed to and that you're aligned with, right? And then your voice, we know we're like being silenced. They're always trying to take away our voice. Now, sometimes like leveraging your voice really does mean being silent, right? Because often there are times when there is real power in being silent, but there's also many more times where we have to be vocal, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be loud. It doesn't mean that you have to be harsh, but we need to know that as women, we need to speak up and we need to speak out. And it's not just for ourselves, but we need to do that for others. Oftentimes we don't speak up for other women because we fear that there's backlash and retribution, and we don't want to be on the other side of that. But, I talk about in my TEDx when I talked about bystander effect, and I said, in our silence lies complicity. And so when we're silent, when those things are happening and we're just like, or we go in the bathroom and be like, I'm so sorry that happened. But in the space that it's happening, we don't stand up. That's a real problem. And so part of, being out there and really gaining your freedom and stepping into your greatness is leveraging your voice, and then being visible, whatever that means for you. So it's funny, I'm a speaker, but I'm a really quiet person, and I have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I'm like, I know I should be on social media, but I really don't want to be on social media. I don't want to tell you my business. I don't know I just want to work. I just want to, right? I just want to do what I do to impact the world, right? But we do have to really be visible. Me being visible is what caused me to end up losing my job as a lawyer, my last job, because I started really building my personal brand, and my boss didn't like it and questioned me about it. Right. And so they started doing things, and what they started doing was doing things to diminish me, to silence me, to make me feel less than. Right. So they were trying to take away the power, but they didn't realize I had already stepped into the V-suite, right? I was doing the things that I know that I needed to do. And at the end, they said, listen, we're letting you go because we can't afford to pay. You're wonderful. Yeah. But really, that was the downfall, right? I could see it happening. And so we have to understand that sometimes that visibility is going to threaten, right? And we have to know that you're not the problem, right? You're not intimidating, as they say, they're intimidated. Right. And so you can't allow other people's, what other people think about you is not your business. And you can't let other people's shortcomings keep you from your destiny, right? Keep you from doing what you want to do. So be visible. It doesn't mean you have to be everywhere all the time. It means to optimize your presence. So be in the places that you need to be. If you need to be seen at a meeting, then you need to be there. If you're at the meeting and you have to raise your hand and ask a question, when I'm out, if I'm at a conference or anywhere, I'm going to ask a question because I need you to know that I'm there, and I'm a business person. So, I'm a speaker. I need people who are in that room to say, oh, we could hire her, right? To be a keynote speaker, to be a trainer, whatever. So you have to be intentional and strategic. So if you're like me, who is an ambivert, be intentional and strategic about your visibility. And then, oh my gosh, so much, hold on, guard, and fiercely demand your value. Right. And I always say value and not worth. And the reason that I say that is because when we attach our worth to a money, and somebody says, I'm not going to pay you that, or no, for this job or for this, no, then all of a sudden that has something to do with us personally. It's not your worth. It has nothing to do with that. No one can ever pay your worth, but there's an exchange of value. So whether you're an employee in an organization or you're a business owner, there's an exchange of value through a product, through a service, through the hard work that you do every single day. And there's value in that. And so you need to get really, really clear about who you are and really look at the things that you have accomplished in life. Forget about imposter syndrome. I don't believe in it. I don't think it exists. I think it's something that is used to hold women back against societal programming. Think about who you are in this world. We're high achievers. We accomplish, we move on. We forget that we've done these things. It's so important for you to do that reflecting, to do that personal inventory. You'll be so shocked. One of my coaches had me do this years ago, and she's like, I don't care, from way back when, just write down. I wrote down all these things, and I was like, oh, you're a bad, right? Because you forget. And so once you start to do that and really just operate in that space and claim your value, and because you're vocal, right? You're using your voice because you have a vision for what your life looks like, because you're visible, then you can feel more powerful and comfortable in really commanding and demanding your value.
Wow, I love the V-Suite framework because you have all of the pieces together. So the vision, obviously, you want to figure out like kind of what I like the way you put the vision, because really kind of use all of those five senses to really truly embody what is it that you want to do. And I think a lot of people, specifically women, are put into these little boxes, and then it's like, okay, well, what do you love to do that when you're doing it, the hours just melt away? And that is if you can monetize that,
Mm-hmm.
you will be like happy and fulfilled in your job, regardless. So obviously,
And Rosie, can I just say one other thing too?
sure.
Even inside of the vision, also really focus on who you want to be. So
Mm.
often we are so focused on the doing, right? What do we want to do in life? No, who do I want to be doing that?
Yes.
Right. So really, even in the vision, like who are you? Who are you in that space? Because then when it comes to raising your voice, right, to using your voice, when it comes to demanding your value, when it comes to being visible, then who I want to be, I can see, okay, well, I'm not going to do that, because if I do that, that's out of alignment with who I want to be in the world. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Obviously, we already talked about voice. The visibility is also important, because I know it's funny because so many speakers are introverts, and we're out there. I'm kind of a little bit of in the middle, because I'm comfortable being by myself, but I'm also comfortable out, being out in like social situations and stuff. But how you want to be visible, that is important to you, the way that it's important to you, because like you said, social media is not necessarily an end all be all for everybody, because I am on social media, but I try to be very strategic on like, where do I want to spend my time? And then the value, I know you said you don't use the word worth. So I have a program that is set that I talk about know your worth, but I always preface it with, the word worth is, it means many things to many people. And I just want to preface it with, you are priceless. So we're not talking about your money value. It's like, you are worth so much. And then I talk about the professional business value.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So those, I make sure that we have that same distinction. So I really like the way you put that as well.
I love that. I love professional business value. I love that.
So I love your V-Suite. That's fantastic. And can people get any kind of V-Suite download from your website?
It's not on my website. I should put it on there. Now that you say that, there is a document that I created, and it's also, I do it as a keynote. And I have been thinking about actually doing this as a program for women.
I think that would be fantastic, Kelly. Like, absolutely fantastic.
I've developed it. I just haven't put it out there in the world. I thought about it because there's things that we can do in each step to help people really, get out there and really start to pull it together. And being in community.
Yes.
With other women who can cheer them on. So I don't know, maybe it'll come out.
Sounds good. Well, I will tell you, like, for me, just the awareness, like when we talk about the V-Suite framework, just making people aware that they have this power within them. And a lot of times it's just like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And then if you can, like I always say, if I can impact one person, can impact one person, so that's fantastic. All right. So I'm going to shift a little bit.
Okay.
I would like to know a little bit more about your story. So you're a lawyer turned professional speaker. You have a TEDx. So how did you decide, even as you were a lawyer, that you wanted to do a little bit something different for Kelly to impact the world? Tell me a little bit about that.
So I practiced, I keep forgetting, this year is my 28th year of practicing law. But I actually retired after 24 years. And so while I practiced law, one of the things that I always told myself was, being a lawyer is what I did for a living, not who I was as a person. And so while I was practicing, I was always doing something else. So I was a teacher. So I taught the police academy, the corrections academy, law school, college, right? I taught all kinds of things. I was a mediator. I was an arbitrator, and I was always doing different things. And I always spoke and I always trained, right? And towards the end of my career, so around 2017, I started to get an itch. And I was like, I'm tired, because I was a trial attorney all of those years. Though I love trials, I was like, I want to do something different. And the world was changing, as we know. And so around the end of 2017, when it was time, do your New Year's resolutions, I wrote, I wanted to be a professional speaker. I wanted to do a TEDx. I wanted to write a book, and I wanted to lose weight, right? And those are the things that I wrote on there. And I just started like doing the research to figure out, okay, how could I get these things accomplished? I have not figured out the weight thing yet, even though I know it could be. I just, that's something that I keep putting off. But the book and becoming a professional speaker and doing the TEDx, I did all of those things in an 11-month span while practicing law full time. And what it was for me was that I was sitting in a deposition one day, and I was looking at the witness and I was listening to him, and I said, I was just thinking to myself, there has got to be more than this. Like, there's just like, I think that week I had done like 10 depositions or something already. And I was like, there has just got to be more than this. And I remember having a conversation one day. There was something that happened, and there was a Black woman who had been dragged through a Waffle House, and we were having a conversation about it. And I wanted to make it right. Like, this was something like, we really need to, say something about this. And I was told that we couldn't, because of how it would affect basically the bottom line. And for me, I was just like, whoa, I was like, that was really interesting to me. And I was like, okay. And I started to think, I was like, that could be me. And having, and being the mother of a son who was a victim of police brutality, that for me, like, just was like, oh, so we're just not going to stand up for people. And so I wanted to be able, as an employment lawyer, I saw so much, and I realized that so much of what was happening in organizations is not because people are inherently evil or that they, really wanted to harm people. Some of it is just a lack of knowledge. And I wanted to figure out how I could leverage all of what I had done and I had learned to create a different impact in the world, a larger impact in the world, and not be restricted by the rules of the bars, the different bars that I'm a member of. And, and also somebody else paying my bills, right? Somebody pay my paycheck. So I started to go on this journey and try to figure out what I needed to do. And I did those things, right? I wrote the book, I, became a professional speaker. I did my TEDx, and then I started planning my exit. They were also planning my exit, right? We were just like, who's going to do it first? And I had, I had a conversation with the HR person one day, and I was like, listen, we both know I'm going to leave. It's just, who's going to do it first, you or me? And they ended up doing it first, right? So, and that was okay, because actually their timing was better than mine. So sometimes we get really nervous, and the day that I got let go, which was October 19th of October 22nd of 2019, that day in my office, and I tell this story, I won't tell it now, but I, uttered to myself my freedom papers. Like, that day I knew that I was getting my freedom papers. And, my job ended at the end of the year, but had it not, I would be doing what I was doing, like playing footsie, right? Because I was comfortable. I had this paycheck. I had this good job, as they say. And then, right, you play footsie, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Yeah, I'll do something with the, that I want to leave, but let me not do it today.
Right.
And had they not done that, and had I not, just listened to the universe and say, you said this is what you want to do. You created this vision for yourself. Now, are you going to step into this? Had I not done that, when George Floyd was murdered, and the whole DEI space just became like this thing, I would have not had the opportunities that I had in that space because I would have been working. I would have been trying cases. I wouldn't have been able to go and do the things, right, and have the conversations that I wanted to have. And so though it was scary, though it wasn't like on my timing, it was the right time. And I think when we have a vision, and that's why I said so important about like, who do you want to be in the world? What I knew, right? I didn't know necessarily how I was going to do all of it. I said professional speaking, but I knew who I wanted to be in the world was what my purpose is, which is the light for others to stand in their greatness. And so being that person, right, meant that I had to make the decision to go forward with what I said I wanted to. So that's how I got here. And I started a women's community called Ladies Who Leverage, which we had during the pandemic and really brought, all these women together. And now I work with particularly women. We've had 2 men, but particularly women who are subject matter experts to help them leverage their voice and get paid for it, right? And stop having to speak for free and using it to build their businesses.
Amazing. I love that you want people to step into their greatness, because everybody can step into their greatness. It's just we're afraid to pursue it, because like that you were kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and then the universe gave you what you wanted. And I think that's like huge. I wholeheartedly believe when you put something out into the universe, it's gonna come.
It will call you to account
at its time, not your time. I mean, what's that saying? I'm terrible at sayings, but it's like, if you want to laugh, tell God your plan, because then it's gonna be like something completely different. So, all right, well, Kelly, this has been an awesome conversation. I love your V-suite. I love that you help people step into their greatness. So I'm going to ask you one last thing.
Yes.
Are there maybe 2 tips that you want to leave our listeners with?
Let's see. One is to believe and stop asking other people to believe, right? So oftentimes we're like, do you believe in me? They can't believe in you if you don't believe in yourself. So first is to just believe in yourself and to know, I believe this about women, that we are powerful at our core. So believe that about yourself and believe that you could do anything that you want to do in this world. And then I'll leave you with this that my aunt told me, my aunt who's unfortunately deceased, but she told me this when I graduated from college, and I didn't know at the time what she meant. And she said, you cannot love anyone until you love yourself, right? Or she said, you have to love yourself more than you love other people, right? And I am a giver. A lot of us are givers, and we're always giving and we're always doing for other people. And like, we love on them more than we love ourselves. But that emptying, right, of the vessel is not good for us. And so one, just believe that you are the badass that you are. Just believe that and stand in that. And then 2, love you more than you love other people, so that you're not just giving away everything and then you get resentful on the other end because you're not getting, you're not feeling that you're getting anything in return.
Absolutely. So those are fantastic. The first one, I actually started doing about 5 years, no, maybe longer, maybe like 10 years ago, because I am a fact finder. So I do my research. So what would happen is when I had a problem, I have 3 sisters and I have my 2 or 3 best friends. And so I would call each of them, like, I have this problem. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then over the last decade or so, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to do that anymore. What do I think?
Yes.
And that was like a huge turning point for me, because now I know that I don't have to go out and get all these opinions. I value and I believe in myself. So I'm already doing your tip number 1.
No, we don't need to crowdsource.
Absolutely. Well, again, this has been an awesome conversation. So I'm just going to leave you. Any final words that you want to say to our listeners today?
Just be you and just be you and do you.
I love it.
That's it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kelly, for your time. Very much appreciated.
I appreciate it. And thank you for having me, Rosie.
A few of the key takeaways that I got from my conversation with Kelly are pretty keen. First of all, it is so important for people to to feel safe at work. Without feeling safe at work, they're just simply not going to be able to produce at their maximum capacity. The second thing is that Kelly taught us her V-Suite framework, and her V-Suite framework is phenomenal. She actually says that this framework gives you freedom. It makes you more committed to yourself, and you can stand in your own greatness. And just to recap her V-Suite framework really fast. First, vision. Create a vision for your life the way you want it to be, not the way someone else tells you it should be. 2, as women, we need to speak up and speak out, not only for ourselves, but also for others. So for me, it's speaking out for you and for those women coming up behind me so that they can advance in their careers. Visibility, be visible, whether it's on social media, as a thought leader, or just going to talk to different leaders in the organization so that they can know who you are and you can communicate your aspirations to them. And then finally, value. Kelly says, fiercely demand your value. Now, she specifically said that she doesn't use the word worth. I use the word worth, but I do have a caveat saying that when we say worth, we're not talking about a dollar amount on your life, because obviously we're all human beings, so our life is priceless. But there is a professional value that you need to establish, and that's what Kelly's talking about. So demand your value and understand what your professional value is. So again, with this V framework, you can attain the freedom for the life that you want. Kelly left us with 2 tips. Tip number 1, she says, believe in yourself, because when you believe in yourself, you can do anything you want in this world. And then tip number 2, she says, you cannot love anyone until you love yourself. And that is very true. Work on yourself first, and then seek to fall in love or love someone else. Kelly's contact information is going to be on the episode website. And as a reminder, if you have not taken my free quiz, go ahead and take it. It's also going to be linked on the episode website. And the quiz is going to help you figure out how you may be sabotaging your own career advancement. So with that, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Let these stories of self-encouragement and professional development serve as a guide in navigating through corporate America in the most practical and fulfilling way possible. Do not forget to subscribe to the show at nowomanleftbehind.com for more content like this. Leave a rating and share it with your friends, because we want to make sure that no woman is left behind. Until I see you next time, remember to be brave, be bold, and take action.